And I really would love to see also in the chat your initiatives at your institution. So please go ahead and do that. We'll also, this is one of a series. This is the first actually in the innovation webinar series for 2026. And we're going to cover all the big topics in technology and innovation in higher education, from AI. We have to kick off with AI, of course, through to micro-credentials, college to career, online and blended learning, and other types of, topics through the whole of 2026. I think one every month or so. So please go ahead and register for all of those. And if you can't even attend, of course, you can get the recording later. So welcome to everyone who's here live. I can see everyone from all different parts of the world, Puerto Rico, Baghdad, Oman, UK, Australia. So welcome. And also to those people who are watching later and catching up on the recording later. So welcome as well. So let's kick off. I am going to have some polls as well. So make sure you can see in the controls there when we open the polls, because we want to hear from you. My name, as I said, is Dr. Maria Spies. I am the co-founder of HolonIQ, market intelligence platform for education, and also the Chief Innovation Officer at QS. And so I hold multiple roles and look after and lead the innovation practice at QS, which is that thinking about how technology and new models will impact, particularly in higher education, but higher education all the way through to workforce, of course. A little bit about QS, if you're not familiar, let me jump in. We are QS, its mission is to empower motivated people to fulfill their potential, fostering international mobility, education achievement and career development, so all the way through the spectrum. We do this we operate in 4 distinct pillars, which actually together are very powerful: institutional performance, student recruitment, skills and labour market, and innovation and technology. They're the 4 areas of practice in QS. And today, this webinar and our series of webinars is related to and comes from the base of innovation and technology. If you don't know, QS has, surveyed thousands, hundreds of thousands of employers and students. We work with governments. We connect with many, many hundreds of thousands of academics, and thousands of universities are in those rankings as well. So we're sort of interconnected throughout the whole of the industry. I want to start today. There's sort of 4 areas really. And as I said, I'll try to answer those questions as we go through. There's a Q&A box, so please, I've got it open here. I can see there's no questions right now, but if you've got any questions as I go through, please put them in there and I'll try to answer as I go along. There are 4 main areas today. One is I want to start off with artificial intelligence in the broader context, because higher education doesn't operate in a bubble, although maybe it feels like that sometimes, but really the world is reshaping due to the advances of artificial intelligence. Higher education is not immune to that, but it's really good to understand what actually is going on in the broader world, the broader context, and how might that in the future impact our own approaches in higher education. Secondly, then let's take a sort of double click on what's happening in AI in higher education right now, and who's doing what and what are the key elements. And I want to hear from you as well. And I want to introduce the QS AI Capability Framework and the Responsible AI Consortium, because there are some things that are really, really important going forward. I'm going to talk about this later, but the responsible use of AI is something that higher education is very, very focused on, as it should be. And then going forward into sort of what next, what are the next things we can do in terms of AI in our own contexts. So let me jump straight into AI in the broader context. We live in a world of rapidly reshaping technologies that are reshaping industries. And when we think about technology, particularly AI, but not only, in education broadly, not just higher education, but broadly, we see 5 very, very clear trends. One is the movement to focused AI deployment. So experimentation has given way to more targeted bets, essentially, and this may be the case in your institution too. There are still lots of experiments going on, but leaders are now sort of focusing on real specific bets. And I'm going to ask you a bit later where your institution is taking bets on AI, where the resources are going. In higher education, we see, and in education generally, we see a lot of movement in terms of education content, personalised learning, which has been a promise for many years, efficiency, particularly in operations, and engaging students. So using technologies like artificial intelligence to achieve some of those things which are hard to achieve in education, personalised learning, engaging students, and so on. But the point here is we're moving from mass experimentation to much more targeted bets. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Welcome to everyone. I can see more people adding their names. Secondly is, what will differentiate an experience or an educational experience is the engagement of students. And so it's super hard in today's world to engage and create a holistic, seamless sort of experience, but there is much more renewed focus on that. If content is free, and I'm not saying it is, but in many cases it's easier to get the answer to things these days, then what is the thing that differentiates a great educational experience? And it is sort of the engagement and the experience of learners. And so there's a big focus on that. There's a growing priority on motivation, well-being, persistence, the whole learner rather than just an academic sort of focus. So we're seeing solutions in the market, technology solutions, and the industry focusing on engagement and experience. Third, and really importantly, is infrastructure. One can't have a sophisticated or any sort of AI strategy that's going to work unless you have data infrastructure, organized data, and the infrastructure to hold that data. Interoperability is incredibly important, cloud computing, etc. So, focusing on infrastructure, governments are spending a lot of money on this as well. But one of the key highlights of tomorrow's, I think, education sector is that it's harder and harder to do it alone. It's very, very difficult for institutions to do all of this all on their own. So what we're seeing is deep integrated partnerships emerging as a core enabler in this infrastructure space. That comes with great benefits and also great risks, probably. Let's talk about that later too. Fourth is outcomes. If we're moving from experimentation, we need to place bets in this case in AI. Then what are the outcomes actually? How do we measure those outcomes? Are we getting a return on that investment? And so we're seeing a lot more focus on the measuring of outcomes. However, progress in this space remains quite limited. There is a disconnect between traditional ways of measuring outcomes and the speed at which technologies are moving. And so, but this is a big focus. And finally, the world is moving into a sort of more and more skills and jobs are much more important, particularly in and for higher education. And so we're seeing a lot more solutions that try to bridge that gap between the education, perhaps in formal contexts like higher education, skills. What are the skills? How do we measure those skills? How do we articulate? How do learners articulate those skills? How do we then articulate those skills into jobs and career navigation? And so we're seeing a lot of movement in terms of technology into this space, and AI is having a great sort of impact as well in these types of solutions. So they're the sort of big ticket trends overall. And when we sort of double click into how AI is impacting, we see a lot of AI powered solutions directly to students or through institutions to students, but mainly directly to students, helping but at least being a companion. Again, the efficacy on this is is still shaping, but a lot of students are using artificial intelligence as their sort of learning companion, if you like, from study partners to language, well-being even, career navigation solutions, helping with research, or assisting teachers in their own work. And so this is the beginning of, I think, mass behaviour change. And the world is using AI in ways which are starting to, impact the way they gather information and the way they learn. And AI is a central tenet to that sort of behaviour change. This is not just in the education space, but even in skills intelligence, in the what we call skills intelligence. So recruitment, talent management, skills foresight. How do you identify skill trends? How do you map trends? How do you build an end-to-end sort of workforce system that maps internal talent, uncovering skills, identifying gaps, forecasting futures? These solutions are all available. And, the extent to which artificial intelligence is very deeply embedded into these solutions in the market, which are, garnering a lot of attention, and they're getting a lot of capital for money behind these solutions as well. Onto the capital, when we look at every single one of these sort of circles in this circle pack chart is a funding round. This is a capital investment into education, into an AI-powered education solution. Post-secondary is in the blue, workforce green, and K-12 in the mustard there. And so we've highlighted a couple of these. These are signals about where things are heading. So, for example, Applyboard, you might know, it's a solution to help end-to-end international student sort of mobility. $250 million is a lot of money to invest in that. Somebody has, thought, well, this is a growing market. Anthology, learning management system. At the same time, we see fantastic grants to universities and university systems like Empire AI, the state of New York, and the universities in the state of New York have got together with the government to build supercomputing and other things. And there's many examples of those. Or on the other side of the chart, there's a sort of AI tutoring, $340 million, video learning for workforce, or Kajabi, which is a workforce and upskilling sort of learning management system. So this big capital going into AI actually, not necessarily the delivery of the content and the learning, but the platforms upon which this is delivered. And so this might seem a million miles away from higher education, but actually these platforms are the platforms that, millions of learners at some point in time in which they may undertake their learning. And so we're seeing a lot of capital move into this space. Strategic integrations and partnerships are something that is going to become much more important for higher education, particularly as it relates to AI infrastructure. The Googles and the OpenAIs and, the other sort of big technology platforms are just making partnerships directly with governments, whether it be state governments or whole of country, to embed their AI solutions into education systems. Often these are initially, not always, but often they're initially in the K-12 system. Again, it might seem like a million miles away from higher education, but actually once a student is, from their teens, is using these types of technologies and it's embedded into their daily learning, that behaviour and practice will continue when they move into higher education, of course. So we see Google rolling out Gemini AI. This is just a few examples. There's many. OpenAI expanding its presence in Indian higher education. And at the same time, lots and lots of fantastic government and private funding through grants into universities to build particularly research capabilities. But these are consortiums. These are partnerships, deeply integrated partnerships, and that is one of the important elements of going forward in terms of higher education. Like research, it's always in partnership, often in partnership either with other researchers, other institutions, with governments, with grant funding bodies, and we're going to see that type of strategic integration also in technology and AI particularly going forward. No one's going to be able to really do it all alone. So start thinking about in your institution, I guess, how that might impact for positive as well as negative potentially, how deep partnerships can impact your own operations. I mentioned earlier that AI, there's behaviour change. People are changing the way they get information, how they learn, how they ideate. And so, we're starting with the younger generation, 14 to 22-year-olds here. Half of them use AI for homework help or brainstorm ideas or get information. 37% of consumers globally, when they start a search, they start it in AI with AI rather than just the regular sort of web search by Google or whatever. So that percentage is going to keep going. So people are starting with AI rather than starting elsewhere. And, in the US, AI-powered educational games were the most popular tool among school teachers in 2024. And so, again, it's sort of starting young. This behaviour change is making its way through. Not just in the education system, but what about the workforce? Artificial intelligence is, as you know, reshaping jobs, whole industries. And so here, when we put together through our labour market intelligence work at QS, our skills work, when we put together the global workforce, which is about 3.3 billion workers, and, through scoring the vulnerability to both automation and augmentation, we see here, sort of a heat map of where jobs are going to be impacted by automation and augmentation. And so, you see a lot in the efficiency uplift area, which is low automation exposure, and high augmentation. You want to be on that top right-hand quadrant. This is different in different geographies. Workforces are all different, and educational levels also make a difference. Let me just jump through to the next one here, which is when you look at the entire workforce on the top left-hand side there, you see that sort of middling area, but no high school diploma is sort of low automation. Often these are service jobs or agriculture or whatever it may be. But actually deep diving into one's geography and also and by industry is one of the areas of work that we've been focusing on. The impact of AI moves all the way through into jobs and skills, and that effectively rebounds into the education sector as well. I talked about partnerships and integrations. And one of the key partnerships and integrations that is really, really important right now is agentic partnerships. And so we've been tracking this. Universities, big tech, education technology companies are, partnering with others on their agentic AI objectives and strategies. And so you will have heard of agentic AI. You might be experts in it yourself. But we're seeing at an industry level lots of activity in this space, and particularly partnerships and integrations. Agentic AI is something that is going to really change the game. You may know this Maltbook, which is a social network only for AI agents, and humans are welcome to observe. And this is interesting, slightly scary. Maltbook was recently acquired by Facebook. And so we're going to see, the agentic revolution in terms of how humans interact with artificial intelligence and their own agents. But more than that, this is Maltbook, but there's also OpenClaw, which was acquired by OpenAI, and OpenClaw is a really good example where these are these agents don't just act on you. They act on your behalf independently. You don't have to ask them what to do. And so this sends all sorts of, amazing efficiency, but also lots and lots of difficult questions around the ethics of all this and the guardrails. So I'm going to come to that soon. But agentic AI is really moving, and so if you already haven't in your institution started to look at this and address it, I recommend you do because it's moving very fast. However, I don't want to end on this sort of doom and gloom note. What is unlikely to change? I mean, what are the things that all these changes, these fast changes in AI out in the world that impact, and in workforce and in education that impact us, prompt us immediately to ask the questions about where is higher education should focus? What do we do really well? What shouldn't we do anymore? What should we partner with for rather than trying to own? And so, AI can't fully replace accountability, social pressure, deadlines, the things that happen in the real world. Credentials and signaling. I think the nature of credentials will expand, but there is signaling around competence, baseline knowledge and competence, persistence. At the moment, qualifications, degrees and certifications, and that might broaden and the shape of those things might change, but that credentials and signaling is still incredibly important. Trust is a very, very big part of this, and community, discussion, competition, collaboration. You can build great community online, of course, but how is on campus or in person different? And so this helps institutions and universities to start thinking about where should we focus our efforts? What are we really good at in terms of learning and teaching and delivering a student experience and outcomes, of course, for those. And so part of this sort of discussion is around, where higher education should focus its efforts in terms of artificial intelligence. Let me move on to AI in higher education. So some of the things that we're seeing, and I'm really interested in some of the things that you're seeing. I have a question from Laura. Thank you, Laura, for putting the first question in there. And Laura's comment and question is, is this efficiency uplift possibly overestimated? Maybe. I mean, absolutely, potentially. We've seen these sort of hype cycles before. I think this is something slightly different. Did the advent of the internet make certain things more efficient in terms of, let's say, e-commerce or whatever? Well, yes, it did. It took a long time. And so, I think we're going to see short-term changes and longer term movement, actually, but we're in the very beginning of this. I think it's going to take another decade or so. Let me move into where universities are focusing their efforts. So after a year of research and working with universities all around the world and understanding where they are focusing their efforts, it sort of comes down to these 7 main groupings that we've categorized into 3 areas. So AI to drive institutional mission, supporting what institutions already do, transforming the student experience and outcomes, advancing research, and providing opportunity. Can AI help with those core institutional mission? Operational efficiency, of course, is the next perhaps lowest hanging fruit, achieving efficiency, perhaps access, transparency, across all our operations. Competitive positioning is another element of this. And then sort of advancing a culture of innovation or re-engineering parts of the institution. They were the sort of 7 main areas that institutions were focusing their efforts. And I'm interested in where your institution is focusing its efforts. So I'm going to open a poll now. Let me just open that poll. I'm going to start this. I'm going to launch this poll. And what I'd like you to do is maybe identify the first couple, the first few that are most for your institution. Where is your institution focusing its efforts? Is it student experience, research, opportunity, efficiency, competitive positioning? I'm just going to launch this poll and you should be able to see it. And if you can vote here, or not vote, but give your answers. You can choose as many as you like, but I'd love to know the top 3 or something. Would be great. I've got advancing research, efficiency, competitive positioning coming up here. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I'm not sure whether you can all see this, see these poll results. Hopefully you can. But you know, transforming the student experience and achieving efficiency so far, advancing a culture of innovation. This is really interesting. Not so much on institutional engineering at this point, but perhaps that's a byproduct rather than an objective in itself. And so, yes, we have more people still voting, but you know, at the moment, transforming the student experience and outcomes is number 1, followed by achieving efficiency and advancing a culture of innovation. So these are, you know, AI presents opportunities, I guess, for these, for, you know, for the, to use these technologies. Just trying to, someone's just mentioned, Dan, thank you, to say that you can't see the poll results. Oh, once the poll ends, we'll be able to share the results. Okay. All right. Let me, if you can all jump in and just vote if you haven't already. And okay, I'm going to end the poll and then I'll share the results. There you go. Okay, so you should be able to see it now. So transforming the student experience, followed by efficiency, advancing a culture of innovation closely behind that, and advancing research. So this is really interesting. And when we ask universities all around the world the same question, let me just go back onto this. When we ask, you know, through our academic, we do an AI pulse survey every year, one for academic and one for students. And we ask this very same question. And it's interesting that advancing research was the top result, followed by student experience and outcomes and efficiency, competitive positioning. I mean, these are all sort of pretty close to each other. And it's not surprising that focusing on research overall, there's lots of potential for, you know, for AI to impact research, just not even necessarily researching about AI, but also using AI in research processes, of course. And Tayeb, thank you for mentioning that supervision of AI is very important. Agreed, absolutely. Moving on to, this is really related to artificial intelligence and research. And so I'm sure this is absolutely the same in whatever geography you're coming from, whether it's city, state, country, or region. We see a lot of activity in universities developing and getting funding for and collaborating on supercomputing, powering sort of that sort of national capability. You know, artificial intelligence is a top national capability for every single country, and universities are at the heart of this. And so, you know, from the US to Europe, high performance computing, supercomputers, to Edinburgh, Tsinghua, Cambridge. I mean, you know, the UAE and Saudi Arabia, like every single country. And what's interesting is we're starting to see more and more collaborations between university networks and across countries. And so this sort of mirrors what's always happened in research, which is institutional collaboration and networks across countries. So I think this is really heartening that universities are being turned to as the experts for national capability in AI power, because, you know, there's a lot of press around obviously those big technology companies, but it is incredibly important that universities and the higher education system is right at the centre of this. Obviously, there are many sort of challenges in universities to sort of AI adoption, and there's many different aspects of AI adoption, whether it be in teaching, learning and curriculum and academic integrity and testing and assessment, or through to, operational efficiency or whatever it may be. So there's limited resources, faculty training, not just faculty training, but student as well, concerns around academic integrity, data privacy, and, here it's sort of policies that need to be reshaped for this new world, but also infrastructure, and that's sort of resource limitations, not just about resources, but the infrastructure in universities, data and technology infrastructure often isn't optimized or has never been optimized for this sort of need for sort of integrated systems. So there's quite a number of sort of challenges. But when we ask academics, these thousands of academics all over the world, like, what are the top challenges for implementation for you? Actually, ethical concerns from a huge, yes, data security and privacy, lack of strategy, whatever it may, skills and so on, but ethical concerns. And so there's a long way to go in terms of, should we be implementing this? What's underneath this model? Do we understand it? Is it transparent? And so, the responsible element and the ethical element of AI is top of mind for institutions globally, and I think probably your institution as well. Having said that, when we ask institutions globally about what are the factors that contribute to successful projects, we wanted to understand what was in place when AI projects were successful. Essentially, there's 7 main factors: clear leadership and articulated vision, staff and faculty champion, internal alignments, building capability or having technology capability, the willingness to explore and experiment, leveraging existing strengths. These were the things that were in place: the ability to demonstrate value or return on investment, and keeping humans, including students, in the loop of these projects. And so these were the 7 sort of main factors that contributed to successful projects. I think this is really interesting because a lot of these are human. They are all pretty much human, pretty much. And so it's around the organisation and its people more than anything else. And I'm interested from your perspective, I'm going to open the second poll. Which of the following resonated with you that have contributed to successful AI projects at your institution? Again, you can choose more than one, but what were the top 3, say? Let me just open this poll. Let me just get onto the correct one. I'm going to launch this poll. Really keen to know which few, perhaps top 3, were the most important contributing factors to any successful AI projects in your institution. So at the moment, only a few voted so far, but clear leadership, willingness to explore and experiment, staff and faculty champions, they're the sort of top ones so far. I mean, all of these are important probably, but we have clear leadership and staff champions and exploration, willingness to explore and experiment, keeping humans in the loop, all of these coming up top, so to speak. I'll just wait a few more minutes and then end the poll and then share it, and then share with you again what our thousands of institutions and academics around the world told us about these. I mean, these are all important, but clear leadership and articulated vision was the top one here, followed by probably closely staff and faculty champions, and then willingness to explore and experiment, keeping humans in the loop. They're all important. Let me end the poll and then share the results with you so you can see. Really, firstly, we have clear leadership, and that's hard because who leads AI in an institution? Well, everybody probably at different levels. Willingness to explore and experiment, keeping humans in the loop were the top ones. So let me just go back here to what our global group told us. And the willingness to explore and experiment was top, which is really interesting, I think. It's a change in behaviour. It's a different way of thinking and doing. which is counter sometimes to other ways of developing something new. And, you know, having that willingness to try something, fail, try it again, rapid iteration. It's sort of counterintuitive in some cases to the normal ways of building new things in higher education. And so, you know, this requires a lot of, you know, a lot of work institutionally in terms of culture as well. At the same time, the vast majority of academics who participated in our pulse surveys agreed or strongly agreed that it is absolutely essential to be able to understand and be able to use AI effectively and incorporate it into the curriculum. Like huge, no one's disagreeing here. Well, some people, but not many are disagreeing here. This is incredibly important. The question, of course, comes how to do this given these issues. Students as well, when we ask students, what do they want? Actually, they want clear policies, really standard on how to use it. And, you know, nearly as much, focus on educating about how ethically to use AI. Students are asking for this. And so this is a really important element of not just using ethical use of AI inside an academic environment, but having those ethical foundations or those responsible AI foundations to use all through your life. I mean, this is the key top question right now, incredibly important. And actually, academic integrity and AI literacy is the biggest part of how academics are delivering AI sort of education. It's around how to use it well and literacy rather than anything else. So this is incredibly important, and the job, you know, one of the, I think, key jobs of higher education, as opposed to other types of learning or industry who may not have that same focus. This is core business for higher education in terms of critical thinking and critical questioning and, you know, ethical considerations for any topic, but particularly AI in this case. And we're asking institutions and academics, how can we better prepare students? Training on how to use AI ethically is number one, and guidance on ethical use is sort of the same thing, flip side, number two. And so I think that we're starting to see, we probably have seen, and we're starting to see much more focused attention on this topic inside curriculum than ever before. I mean, we see this in also K-12. Just yesterday or the day before, as an example, I'm in the US right now, and the city of Boston has approved to integrate ethical use of AI content into the curriculum for all Boston school kids, essentially. And so we're starting to see this all over the world, and you know, higher education particularly. I wanted to move forward onto the sorts of things the sorts of topics that that QS has focused on, because we work with thousands of universities all around the world. We talk with them every day, and we know a lot about the sorts of areas they're grappling with. And so we've initiated two projects, two initiatives to support institutions in this, not just institutions, but to support higher education in this space. One is the AI Capability Framework, and the other is a Responsible AI Consortium, because we know that, you know, artificial intelligence is frothy, it's messy, it's everywhere and it's nowhere in the world and in higher education. And so one of the things we worked with technology companies, lots of universities, governments, to build a framework to help institutions unpack how how they can develop their AI capability internally. So this is over a whole of institution, and it covers, governance and human commitment. That's leadership and capability and training, codes of conduct and data protection and so on, governance and ethical standards, all that whole area, operational efficiency and outreach, teaching, learning, assessment, and the research and scholarship. So the whole sort of value chain in the operations of an institution. And so we've developed this capability framework. It's open source. You can go to that website that's on the screen there. And there's 4, let me just move forward here. There's 4 pillars, which you saw, 16 indicators, 33 sub-indicators, and then we have assessment levels. They're sort of capability levels with descriptors, because part of the problem and challenge really is that how do you get a handle on what's happening in an institution? There's areas of amazing practice that perhaps people don't know about and haven't shared across faculties or across schools, for example. And so this sort of process helps institutions to have a common language and a way of talking about things, and also to identify and highlight areas of great practice for internal sharing. And so we've developed this framework to, as a way of supporting higher education institutions. It helps, a number of institutions globally have gone through this process, self-assessment even, to evaluate their adoption, identify where the gaps are, maybe strategic alignment, where they should place more of those bets, for example, decision-making, risk mitigation, and so on. So a lot of institutions have gone through this process and going through this process. And we have an opportunity for a self-assessment process, so you can just get a handle on what you're doing internally, and then a QS analyst sort of moderated assessment where we do an external assessment, and we include in that, which I think is really important actually, faculty and staff surveys, because internally you might think we're doing well here and I'd rate ourselves here and so on, but actually that might not be translating into faculty and students. And so we triangulate that. And this really does help institutions. So it's something that we can support institutions with on this what seems like we've moved a long way in the world in AI, but actually in hindsight, probably we're just at the very beginning. And so, as I said, there's sort of 5 capability levels for every single one of those indicators, and that really does help institutions with their, with figuring out where they're at and having a common language for these things. And I think responsible AI is so important. Ethical use of artificial intelligence. How has the institution made sure across their technology, procurement, policies, and so on that we're talking about fairness and safety, transparency, and accountability. This is really incredibly important, and higher education needs to be at the forefront of this. And so our AI capability framework is focused on responsible use of AI across all of those dimensions. And the other thing we felt was really important from our perspective, because we connect with a lot of institutions, we're able to connect a lot of institutions. There's a self-assessment process, I'll jump through that, but we're able to connect a lot of institutions. So we, and along with other organisations, have built a consortium, a responsible AI consortium. We love for institutions to be part of this, because this is where you can work with other institutions on AI-related projects. You can learn from peers around the world about their challenges and best practices and so on. So this responsible AI consortium is something we can give essentially to the industry. And the responsible AI consortium has sort of 4 components. There's the AI capability assessment, the self-assessment, which I just talked about. You go through that, working groups, AI research, access to education insights and tools. We do market mapping of what's happening in the world, and so you get access to that. And then there's experiential learning projects with students. So these are sorts of some of the things that membership of the Responsible AI Consortium As I said, we seem like we've come a long way, but actually we're probably at the very beginning in terms of these AI and where it's heading. And these foundations are incredibly important. Having very strong foundations, ethical and responsible AI use foundations inside institutions will set up the institution and its students for going forward. And also we want the world, whether it's technology companies or employers or employer groups and governments, to turn to higher education for best practices in the responsible use of AI. And so these are the sorts of things. And I wanted to end today's webinar with sort of strategic priorities and next steps. I'm really keen to understand what are the sorts of things that you and your institution might take in the next 6 to 12 months. What are the things you're already working on? And I'd love for you to share that in the chat, or also, of course, happy to answer questions in the Q&A. We have some time for that. So keen for anyone who's interested to share their sort of current actions or key priorities for their institution over the next 6 to 12 months in the chat area, or of course, please jump into the Q&A as well. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to end on a QR code, because if you're interested in the framework or anything, please chat with us. But I'll move back to the question. So what are the sorts of areas that are a key priority for your institution? Laura, thank you. So Laura's institution is upskilling of faculty, and that is a huge priority for many institutions. And partly that comes, from within, and also bringing in partners and experts to support with that type of upskilling, depending on what type of upskilling you're talking about. Keen to continue connecting on this topic. Please do take the time to have a look at our other webinars in this innovation series. And we do map the market, and, whether it be micro-credentials or AI or college to career or other areas where technology is having a very, very big impact. Love for you to join. And also please do join us at our events and conferences around the world. These topics are on the stage. Love to meet you in person and at some of those events as well. Clotta, thank you for your note there. Or I'm getting lots of chats here. So upskilling faculty, another upskilling faculty, working on guidelines for ethical and effective use. I mean, that's just super, super important. It's the foundation for everything. Thank you for that, Tina. And Clotta, conversations with training for students, absolutely, on the intentional use of AI. Very, very important. Understanding the impact on learning and human well-being. I mean, there's just so much potential here for even not just theoretical research, but really impactful research. Do we have case studies in LATAM? Yes, I mean, we do. Please join us on our website. You'll find some resources there. And also, Latin American institutions as part of our AI consortium, our Responsible AI Consortium. Massimo, thank you for your question. Can we trust public AI engines to introduce AI, or is it better to create your own? I mean, these are really big questions. One of the that's a hard one to answer. But one of the things that we should all be pushing for, of course, is transparent and, lots of guardrails around transparency, mainly around these models, and, who can regulate that. These are private markets. but the government has something to do with this, of course, in different countries. You know, creating your own engine, is that something that is you know, an area of expertise in your institution? There's nothing like creating your own thing in order to understand it very well, so you can then have proper conversations with others who are also creating these engines. These are big strategic questions. Upskilling students, and, you know, AI competitions. I mean, these are all really great ways of building capabilities, and that's what we're doing here. What you're talking about, all of you, is building capabilities internally, institutional capabilities, individual capabilities, but with a foundation of ethical and responsible use. This is the responsibility of higher education, in my opinion, because the private markets don't often lead with that. These are really, really important. Thank you so much for your question about which are the top 2 or 3 countries in the world that are leading when we think of these AI-led transformations in higher education institutions. You know what? I think it's really interesting because every single country, I mean, in the last 23 months or something, 73 countries around the world have deployed national AI policies and regulations. And so very, very many countries are focusing on this. But we see, you know, as you would expect, there's lots of activity in higher ed in the big economies, let's say, whether it be the US, India, China. Having said that, you know, countries, smaller geographies, smaller countries, in terms of GDP, if that's a measure, are also very focused. It depends on the country and their area of sort of their area of focus. But higher education institutions, I'd say every geography has got like very, very sort of high levels of literacy and activity in their higher education institution. So it's difficult to pick out one or 2 countries. You know, the big ones, as you would expect. Yeah, I mean, I really would love to see all of you coming to some of our events, because we run them all around the world, because that's where these people gather actually, when we have president and provost roundtables on these topics in situ, in geographies, in all our events all around the world. You can get to know these people and share your own experiences. I think we're almost up at time, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today live, and also for those who are watching on demand. Look forward to continuing this engagement. It's a really, really important topic, and please go ahead and you know, register for our upcoming webinars. We've got them all through the year on all different topics in the innovation practice at QS. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Okay.